Welcome back to the Tempo Storm Meta Snapshot Breakdown for the Darkmoon Races mini set. This is our second look into the meta following the release of the new cards, and things have shifted quite a bit. With players competing in Masters Tour qualifiers and facing off against one another on the ladder for qualification spots, the meta has been more competitive than ever. What decks have taken over the top spots of the meta? Which ones have fallen down and struggled to gain a foothold? Today we'll take a look at all of these questions and more in today's Meta Snapshot Breakdown. Before we take a deeper look at the tier list, be sure to subscribe to our channel to be kept up to date with all of our strategy game content. Whether you're a fan of Hearthstone, Shadowverse, or Legends of Runeterra, we have you covered. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's jump into Tier 1. Tier 1 is actually led by only a single deck in the meta. Many players have different opinions on what decks are sitting at the top of the meta, but the majority of top players are in agreement that OTK Demon Hunter is taking over the meta. While the deck can be difficult to pilot, it will reward those who can figure it out. Players who devote time to it will be rewarded with results, and players who just autopilot every turn will have a difficult time. That's not to say that the deck doesn't have some absurd hands, like the ones where it kills their opponent on turn 6 or 7, but realistically the deck will take a lot of conscious effort to pilot well. OTK Demon Hunter has a good matchup against some of the slower decks without easy to achieve win conditions, such as ETC Warrior, or against pure aggro decks that concede to healing, such as Stealth Rogue. Unluckily for Demon Hunter players, there exists a matchup so bad that we'd almost call it unwinnable, and that's against Elucia Priest. The Priest deck exists solely to beat combo decks, and the guaranteed Elucia leaves you all but beat the instant it's played. As we mentioned, Tier 1 only consists of a single deck, but Tier 2 is a bit more diverse. Be sure to stick around until we finish looking at Tier 2 for the return of our Countering the Meta segment, where we take a look at a solid deck that will allow you to gain an edge in the current ladder meta. Leading off Tier 2 is Enrage Warrior. This deck has been near the front of the meta since its inception, and it will likely continue to be at the top until rotation. While the warrior class might not seem like the largest offender, having access to Risky Skipper is enough to blow away the majority of decks. These cards have carried the warrior class to the top, and that's apparent with this tier list. Enrage Warrior has a great matchup against both Tempo and Stealth Rogue, but struggles against some of the more control-based archetypes on the ladder, such as Elucia Priest and Control Warrior. Next up in Tier 2 is another warrior deck with ETC Warrior sneaking in at number 2 on the list. This warrior deck is well known on ladder, and during its original debut was even considered oppressive. Players definitely were not a fan of losing to the combo, but as the meta sorted itself out, it proved to not be that big of a deal after all. While this deck is a force to be reckoned with, it has counterplay, which is all that's really needed to make it feel fair. ETC Warrior has a wide range of matchups and tends to benefit from queuing into some of the more board-based aggressive decks, such as Token Druid or Stealth Rogue. These matchups are considered relatively easy due to how much removal and healing that the warrior has, making it feel like a walk in the park. As for bad matchups, the previously mentioned Elucia Priest can be extremely difficult for you to win. They have access to silence for Rattlegores and can easily play around your combo by just not playing any minions from Galakrond until they've already dumped your combo with Mindrender. The last deck that we'll be taking a look at in Tier 2 today is, well, you guessed it, another warrior deck. It's almost like this class is pretty flexible or something. Surprisingly, this iteration of warrior doesn't always run the Risky Skipper package, but it still sits comfortably at the top of the meta. Bomb Warrior is a deck that you're probably familiar with due to how long it's been in Standard, and it's definitely not a bad choice for ladder right now. The deck has a wide range of matchups, with most of them really not being that bad. Its best matchup comes from Elucia Priest. We aren't kidding when we say that this matchup is practically unwinnable for the Priest either. Unless they pull off something sneaky like making you draw the bombs with Mindrender, this matchup is actually just unwinnable for the Priest. That's not to say that Bomb Warrior doesn't have any unfavorable matchups though, with some of the more aggressive decks going under it and beating it before it can begin to develop bombs. Decks such as Stealth Rogue are typically too fast for the warrior and will require a good hand of removal and armor gain to find a win. When taking to the ladder, it can be hard to find a deck that strays off the beaten path while giving you an edge in the meta. Sometimes players would rather avoid the Tier 1 decks and want something unique that can grant them wins by countering your opponent's deck. Today we have a deck for you that does a relatively good job of countering the meta, and we suggest you give it a try if you haven't already. The deck we're looking at today is the previously mentioned Elucia Priest. This archetype is pretty heavily polarized in that some matchups are essentially auto wins when played well, and others are nearly impossible to win, but we'd feel disingenuous if we didn't mention the deck today. Some professional players such as Monsanto and Gabby have both taken to calling this the best deck in the game following their rank 1 and 2 finishes, but it's important to note that it's very difficult to pilot, but will reward those who play it perfectly. Don't be scared to try it out though, and let us know what you think in the comments below. The Darkmoon Races meta is practically fully developed, and despite minor changes, these are the decks that you'll be seeing when you take to the ladder. We hope you enjoyed this in-depth look at the standard meta in this snapshot breakdown. If you did, be sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like to let us know. Seriously, your support helps a ton, and we truly do appreciate each and every one of you. We wish you the best of luck on ladder, and we hope that this report helps you climb higher than ever before. Until next time.